I kind of wish that there was a larger gap between the previous chapter and this one, only because I wish there was more time between when I did my predictions for this chapter and when I got to this chapter. Because to a degree it went similar to how I wanted, but it was way spicier than I thought. I mean, this panel right here, I mean, this is more than I thought was going to happen. I didn't think Selene was just going to pop up and be like, alright, time to have a taste. The next chapter, I'd say I was more hyped for, like, not like hyped, more anxious and just, like, impatient for this chapter because I really wanted to see Natsu versus Suzaku, and I can wait well, I want to see Natsu at least fight Suzaku again at some point, but I can wait, but both am extremely hyped for Selene versus Suzaku. With Selene, though, the difference between, I'd say, like, if Natsu versus Suzaku, which I'll talk about, obviously, what happened in the chapter in a moment, but I'll just say, like, with the difference between them is, like, I can see the pushback of either side pretty well with Natsu and Suzaku, and again, I'm going to talk more about that before people try and drop comments like, Natsu got defeated this chapter. I'll talk about that, obviously, in a minute. But with Selene, I don't expect Selene to have much of a problem at all with Suzaku. Because the thing is, if Suzaku's even somewhat of a challenge for Selene, I would assume that really, like, the people that are then later going to, I would assume, team up with Suzaku to fight Selene, because there's even mention in this chapter that, oh yeah, we're on the same mission, we're taking down Selene. It wouldn't be that hard, because I imagine, like, if, say, like, he even presented enough to kind of, like, get to, like, I don't know, 25% of Selene, then the rest of the cast should have no problem making up that, that rest of the portion. And especially on top of that, it'd be like, well, then just send the four Black Dragon Slayer Knights. Send all 4 of them in, because then they'll just, demolish any of the Dragon Gods. I do not think Suzaku is gonna perform super well against him. It's kind of like how I went about Yoko challenging the main cast. It's like, I just want you to do well. Though I will say that I don't want Suzaku to get defeated the same way, unless it results in some way of, like, Selene managing to somehow make him one of her subordinates. If she can somehow, like, capture him and yokai boost him up into, like, some form of extra boss in this arc, that'd be hype. But the thing, though, with the next chapter, with Natsu versus Suzaku, it was, like, more about, I want to see Suzaku fight, and then I'm always happy to see Natsu, put in the work, show off his main character, position. And as well as, I mean, like, we don't get full-out Natsu fights very often. We get more often stuff like, stuff with the whole yokai and smaller end-up fights. Like, I loved the Alderaan fight. Like, one of the main things about it, I was so happy, is just seeing, like, Natsu go Dragon Force Natsu all in and seeing, where he's at now. But with Suzaku was, fresh. We haven't really even seen his sword or even his name techniques and whatnot. So, like, him versus Natsu, I really wanted to see Suzaku. But Suzaku versus Selene, like, both sides, I am really excited to see just exactly how they go about their combative performance. The only thing I'd say with Suzaku that needs to happen, and not from the standpoint of, like, it has to happen in the story, it has to happen for Suzaku if he wants to even possess any form of effort, really, to Selene, any form of real difficulty, I would say. Like, I don't even think you get Selene to low difficulty unless you can get past her portals, because if you can't deal with the fact she can teleport you or teleport away at any point in time, what good are you really in a fight with her? So I'm expecting Suzaku in the next chapter to be able to cut one of Selene's portals. Like, she, points at the moon, you see, like, that coming down, and he cuts it. Maybe we'll get an explanation of how his dragon sling abilities work. I don't know. That's the only thing I can see for sure happening next chapter. Not for sure. Something I could see as, like, something I would try and, place bets on. Maybe not next chapter for sure, but during the fight of Suzaku versus Selene, he either has to do something against her portals, or she's going to port him away, and he's going to have to address that. Because that's one of the big things about Selene right now, is, like, even if you tried to fight her, regardless if she wants to get rid of you or she wants to leave herself, portal, bam, she's gone. And not just that, she can be in another dimension if she really feels like it. But Like, going to the chapter itself, I don't want to ramble on too much. I mean, I could obviously talk about just like the setup of what's going on in both this chapter and next chapter, more way into like just talking about Suzaku versus Selene. But in this chapter, it was funny because when I was reading it initially, because I get the chapters off of the Manga Poke app when they come out, so I'm reading them, right as they're released from Japan, because, it helps, it does support official release, and obviously, like, I'm impatient, I can get to the chapter as soon as possible, and then it's just waiting for the translation. But when the chapter started, because if I could go back and just give a direct, like, quote on how long I said I think it was going to take for Natsu and Suzaku to fight, it was longer than I thought, but it went down about the same way that I would have expected. So it was like halfway into the chapter that it happened, and I was reading it when it came out, and I was like, yesterday. But when I was reading it, I was like, got halfway through, and I'm like, are they not going to fight? Like, how's this happen? Because obviously I couldn't read the Japanese fully. Like, I have a translation system I could use, but it takes way longer. It's way slower, obviously, and I might as well just wait for the officials. But Natsu, goes up, smells them, like, immediately. Dragon Slayers, they have their enhanced senses. Natsu is able to identify, oh, this guy's a Dragon Slayer. And when he tries to, like, look at Natsu, he mentions that he's, like, does, a scarf, and he's naked. Oh, he's a pervert. Which makes me wonder, I'd have to go back and look if the Diablos members have the enhanced senses that other Dragon Slayers have. Because it's like, he's not going off the sense of smell and stuff. We've seen other Dragon Slayers have, and there's still obviously aspects about 5th gen that we don't really know. Like, we don't have a full concrete explanation of how they work. I'm pretty sure it just has to do with, like, the way that you eat dragon meat. Maybe it integrates into your DNA differently than just doing, your DNA altering based through the magic of, learning it in a different manner. But Natsu corrects him, tells them, he's the Fire Dragon Slayer, and I wonder if, like, Suzaku, like, he probably should have immediately, like, pinpointed that, or, like, not just, like, oh, he's a fire wizard, but, like, Dragon Slayer in general. There's not a lot of Dragon Slayers in like, the Fairy Tail world, which is funny, because, like, we've seen a good amount, and obviously with 100 Years Quest, we've seen a bunch more. We've gotten, like, more Dragon Slayers than we got, like, the entirety of the main series. But, I mean, we're about that, because it's, like, there's some that haven't been seen yet, but it's, like, we've gotten the main 3, we've gotten Nibaru and Wraith, that's 5, and then we got Suzaku and Georg so far being 7. 8, actually, if you want to count Eleftheria, so either way, looking at it, he's, like, talking to him, and again, there's not a lot, but in the grand scheme of the world, like, we're just seeing it from the more important people's perspective, so we see Dragon Slayers more often, whereas, like, in the actual world, there's millions and millions of people, and probably, like, not even triple-digit Dragon Slayers currently, I would assume. Like, double digits is still good. But when he's talking to him, and he's like, I'm from Earthland, and Suzaku's saying me as well, and he's, like, saying, I got reincarnated into this world, and when Natsu says he's also from Earthland, he's like, oh, what a coincidence. I've come to defeat Selene, though, Natsu's like, oh, same thing, cool, I guess we're friends, then. Like, we're on the same, we got the same goal. And I liked that moment. That was a really nice moment. Natsu's just, like, trying to be buddies with him. Suzaku's like, I don't really get what's going on here, but sure. And when the other characters started showing up, I was like, okay, this is where probably things are going to get a little bit more hectic. Because at this point, which is backed up, obviously, now with translations, there was no mention of the guild. There was no mention of the Fairy Tail Guild. There was no mention of Diablos. And when they're talking, there was also a bit of Lucy saying that she couldn't keep Aquarius out. So that actually goes with another theory that I have, is that Aquarius got summoned because she still has a contract with Lucy, I believe. I think that when Lucy broke the key, she couldn't use it anymore, but Aquarius just didn't end the contract. So until somebody else finds her key that she will agree to form a contract with, or if Lucy finds her key, she's going to keep the key with Lucy. Because that's one of the reasons also I think that Lucy's been able to do the Aquarius star dress. But she now doesn't have Aquarius, so Aquarius is gone. But the thing is, like, with these celestial spirits, we know that they could just auto-summon themselves if they feel like it, because Lucy's magic is so high at this point in Ellen tier, and it's a transcendent level, advanced in many ways. And we haven't even seen the full extent yet. We haven't even seen the other characters on what their transcendent magic is. And I'm kind of happy about that, because, like, Lucy didn't just do hers. She didn't just be like, oh, I feel more powerful, I'm gonna do it. She ran into essentially a scenario, and hers was easier to explain, especially with literal people that are related to her magic. Whereas like everybody else, I would assume it'd be like if you had second origin unlocked, but you didn't know how to utilize it. You're just trying to figure it out. So I would guess, given that like at the end of the chapter there's like some matchups put back, Lucy, if she fights Mimi again, I'm sure she's gonna do fine. Lucy right now is really OP with just like the general setup of like what she's capable of. And I personally, like, it's still a theory, but I personally think that she has the full capability of summoning the Celestial Spirit King if she really wanted to. Doesn't need a key anymore. In Ellen tier, should have the magic amount. She probably can summon him, but we'll see on that one. With Gray, I would assume if Gray fights Hakune again, he's gonna have to figure out what his advanced transcendent magic is, and figure that out in order to beat Hakune. Because Hakune is just, like, fighting her would suck. Like, with Mimi's dangerous, like, in strength, but, like, she didn't do anything that crazy, and you could easily beat her with hacks. Yoko would be just kind of hard to deal with. If you can, get the hit on her, there you go. Whereas Hakune, like, Hakune can just shut down 3 different power systems: magic, spiritual arts, and curses. She gets her ice on you, done. You don't even get to really respond. So I would assume unless Gray becomes, like, so fast the second her ability activates, he finds a way to counter it or something. Because, like, the thing about Gray's Devil Slaying ability that's always going to be an aspect is his adaptability is dependent on his speed. Like, that's one of the things about Slayers, is they can adapt to their different versions of their attribute. We saw that Gray do that with Invul. But the difference between, say, like, Natsu, Godshield, or Gray is that Gray has been emphasized at how fast he is, especially how fast his techniques are, since the start of the series. So Gray has been, really gifted in that area, because it means that he's been able to adapt to stuff pretty much in real time. We saw that with Invul again. Like, he was copying and adapting Invul's True Ice Kamui, like, as it was still affecting him. And this was ice that voids durability. So as it's hurting him doing the regular damage, he's just getting, he's just adapting to it and figuring out how to use it himself. So he's busted when it comes to ice people, as long as he's fast enough in order to adapt to them. So with Hakune, it's really going to just depend on whatever his advanced magic is, whatever he figures out what to do in order to defeat her. That's definitely like a really interesting solution that I can't wait to figure out, just because I feel like it's going to be an easy advancement, unless, like, Mishima just wants to make Gray, like, super busted. Because, like, Lucy's is busted in the fact that she can just do so much at the same time, whereas Gray, unless he gains, like, I would assume he's either going to gain some new level of ice that, like, gives him an extra ability, or it would just be, like, he's so fast and his ice is maybe, like, so overpowering that Hakune's can't do anything. But, I mean, that's completely, like, unknown at the moment. But when they're talking to Suzaku tries to tell him, it's like, oh no, my name's Suzaku, and I'm not going to say it in his, like, way of speech, because he speaks very old. That's one of the reasons I'm wondering if, like, he's actually a really old Dragon Slayer, because we don't have a lot of those, like, in terms of the story. Because when you get to a point, clearly you stop aging. Look at Eleftheria, look at Irene, look at Acnologia. When you get to a point and you become a dragon, it doesn't seem like you age anymore. And outside of, like, the 3, Eleftheria, Acnologia, and Irene, we don't have many, like, older Dragon Slayers. Like, really, like, Wendy through Laxus are only, like, Wendy's, like, what, like, 14, 15 now. Laxus is in his mid-20s. Probably God Serena's the only older one, but you know what I mean? Like, I want another one like Eleftheria, where he's, like, 100+ years old, which I'm kind of hoping we get with Suzaku, which would explain, like, why he's so powerful. But on top of that, it would explain, like, the way he talks. I don't really know. Maybe he's just from, like, a really old traditional place. I mean, that's a small character background piece, I would assume. And not, like... I mean, it could easily just be that's just how he is. And, like, maybe he's just from a small village. I don't know. But he seems to find it really funny that, like, Gray is naked. Like, he just thinks that the whole naked stick is just hilarious. And you have, like, Happy commenting. He thinks that, like, a cat that's only wearing, like, Happy's cloth, that weird kind of like satchel he's got and that kind of thing, that weird like ribbon bandana, he's got like that homeless guy handkerchief setup, the old style where they've got the handkerchief tied to a stick. That's always what I see whenever I see Happy's whole like setup, because I know he keeps fishing there. But Suzaku just seems amused. I thought that was pretty funny. I like Suzaku's personality so far, and that's one of the reasons I think Mishima is setting up Suzaku for like more than just like enemy Fairy Tail, and why people like the main Diablos trio had way more going on for them character-wise than, say, Nibiru or Wraith. Nibiru is still a little bit of a question, because I'm still wondering if he's going to show back up, because he's out of Diablos, and I would assume that maybe he's, like... I've had this weird idea that he's been following Fairytale like frickin' Gollum from Lord of the Rings. But, I mean, that, again, is one of those things where it's like, I have no proof of that, but it's just one of those feelings I have. But, like, he, for the most part, was pretty set in, like, just his character design. Like, he was kind of crazy, but funny at the same time. He was silly. The only thing about him that was surprising, and, like, seeing his character, like, go rereading and stuff, is the fact that when he was fighting Wendy, he was, like, at one point, he's like, all right, I gotta destroy this, this Lacrima before I go back to fighting. I was like, man, this dude's about business. That's one of the things I liked about Suzaku, too, in this. But the Diablos trio and Suzaku, and to a degree a little bit Nibiru, but mainly those four at the moment, were given way more than just like their base personalities. Like when we saw Suzaku, he had that, that intense, super serious swordsman vibe to him. And the first time we saw him in Elentier, he had that in page 7 or on chapter 77 at the very beginning. And then we saw more sides to him. He seems pretty normal, seems pretty regular. And here we're seeing like a comedic side to him as well as kind of a friendlier side. I thought that was really nice in general, so I was happy to see Suzaku just getting some more material to him. And like I said, Mishima, like, it's one of those things when you can see, like, a really easy, like, I made this guy just to be a bad guy, or I made this guy just to be a good guy. It's easier to notice when it's just a bad guy, because it's, like, outside of their set bad guy ways, there's not a lot to them, because their one purpose is to, be a bad guy. And then, maybe sometimes if the author ends up liking them more or something, maybe they're more popular, they can stick around more and then gain more as, as stuff continues. But with Suzaku, like, we already have a lot for him so far, and obviously, like I said, I'm very happy about that. It shows that he is a character that is, he's got more content to him, so he'll last longer than just, like, again, his base cool swordsman personality. But then when he puts the pieces together, he describes all of the members of the main group. He's like a fire dragon slayer, a black-haired ice wizard, a red-haired swordswoman, a blonde celestial spirit wizard, a small child dragon slayer, and 2 cats. They're exceeds though, man, but I mean, close enough. Actually, that's another thing, just as a quick moment. I'm wondering if any of them are going to have exceeds when we get to members of Diablos. So when we get the totality of Diablos, I'm hoping at least one of them has an exceed. I think that'd be really cool. But Suzaku is like, oh, he just realized what happened. He's like, you guys aren't from Fairytale, are you? And that's when they're like, Lucy is trying to intervene, like, hey, let me try and put things in perspective. And he was quick to action. And that's similar, actually, of what, like, Natsu would be. Like, Natsu would be very quick to go against somebody that, brought damage and harm to members of his guild. There's a difference between somebody he thinks is an enemy versus somebody that has experience with as an enemy. And so he ends up just, getting ready, getting a stance to go attack Suzaku. Or Suzaku got in the stance to attack them. And, again, also, I like that he was upset with them over the harm about his guild, but like people in his guild. He's like, you hurt, you guys are enemies that hurt my guild mates, so prepare yourselves. And so this is one of the things I want to talk about in the chapter that obviously people have been talking about is he makes quick work of Urza and Natsu. And I gotta say, at least like Urza reacted to it. Like she got, she moved forward because like you see, she's actually in the back of the group at the time. Like she's the furthest back. She's in the very back. Nobody's behind her. And then Suzaku goes to attack. Urza's in the front by like a good chunk. She's already there. And with Urza, I would say hers is probably like I would assume that doesn't have her full amount of magic. She's still covered in some injuries, but it doesn't look like she's exhausted. She's not breathing heavy. There was no sign that like maybe she was like super low on magic. She at least had enough time to react. And she's in her clear heart armor, which is all based around offense and speed. That's obviously one of the reasons like that's backed up the fact that she could react to him speed-wise. There is ground there that, it would be a different story if Urza's at full power, but I don't really think it would matter against Suzaku, because personally, I think Suzaku is on a whole different spot than Urza right now. Like, I predicted Laxus, if not higher, and it's looking like it's higher. We'll see. Again, I can't say for sure. If Urza was at full power, it'd be different. But I mean, like, in all honesty, like, Urza looks like she's she's like getting as much damage as like what she was when she was like going up against taking a serious fight against Laxus. But again, the magic is the point in there that's like the big factor, because that's where Urza's stats all come from, because she's a wizard and whatnot. But she ends up getting taken down, big blood splatter coming out of the side, and then Natsu ends up going to attack as well. Where he even says, like, this is, a single attack from him took down Urza. And that's when Natsu goes to do it. And Suzaku's even surprised that she was able to react to his sword. So, speed, obviously, in there. Very, very, very fast. None of the other characters reacted to him. Granted, like I'm about to say, like, Natsu goes to attack, and Suzaku just goes right by him. Takes him out. One shot takes him out. And the thing, though, about, like, Natsu versus Urza in this scenario, Natsu made a bad decision of trying to fight Suzaku in base. He's in his base form. He's not in Lightning Flame Dragon mode. He's not in Fire Dragon King mode. He's not in Dragon Force. Granted, I think Dragon Force would have been excessive to jump right in that, but I talked a little bit about it in my stream yesterday. As Natsu's become a lot smarter of a fighter throughout the story, because remember, there's even a comment about it at near the beginning of the war with Alvarez, as he knows that he can't just pop all of his power as soon as a fight starts, because then he's going to be out of power. He's shown that he gradually will increase his level with what he thinks is necessary. Like when we saw him going against Snake Lucy, base wasn't enough to beat her, so he goes into Lightning Flame Dragon mode. With this, like, I feel like Natsu was just like a quick, short, like, jolt decision just to go and attack. Again, he should have at least, I think, went into Fire Dragon King mode. At the very, very least, Lightning Flame Dragon mode. I think Fire Dragon King mode is where he should have popped, because I think Dragon Force again would be too excessive. That's Natsu all out. That's when Natsu's ready to put somebody in a body bag, or I guess in reality ashes. But Natsu just ran by, Suzaku slashed him. The only thing I would say is, like, looking at the panel though, where you see Natsu like take the damage, not the one where Suzaku's in the panel, the one right after that, is like if you look at Natsu's like the cut. There's a part that's slightly not shown, and there's no cut there. And I'm wondering if maybe that's just like the angle of the panel, or if maybe that backs up the whole idea that Suzaku's, the red aspect of his blood, and maybe he's attacking with blood, which could be like the weird, why there's a weird shape to the sheath. Maybe in the like inside of the scabbard for his sword, like there's dragon blood in there or something. I don't know. But either way, very cool. I mean, Suzaku was just being like an absolute monster in this chapter, and like it's even noted, like Graves even says, like this guy's on a whole different level. So I do not think that he could have beaten Natsu if Natsu went Dragon Force. Like if he could beat Fire Dragon King mode Natsu, that'd be impressive. I don't think he could beat Dragon Force Natsu. Like that's too much of a boost. I would really like to see Natsu like ready and like outside of base form going into this fight. But we don't generally get a lot of opponents who go right for, like, cold cut pieces like this. Like, just goes right for violence, like, heavy violence. Like, Acnologia is a good example of that. Somebody who just went right for, we're not talking, we're not having some back and forth, there's not going to be really any dialogue, I'm just going to take you down. And that's kind of how Suzaku did it. Like, a little bit less, I like, to a degree, like, a little less brutally aggressive. Like, Acnologia just ripped the whole side out of him. Suzaku slashing him, granted, like, they didn't get cut in half, so I imagine that, this has to do with durability. Like, otherwise it'd be like, I assume he's fully capable of cutting people in half, but, the main characters, like, they're not going to get chopped in half. But I would assume that, it has to do with, like, general durability and stuff, because it's not like Suzaku in the large scale, I think, is just tiers beyond Natsu. I think Natsu just made a bad choice in not using any of his upper forms in order to deal with it, because, Suzaku was just too fast. If he went Fire Dragon King mode, I think he would have boosted himself up to where he could handle at the very least, like matching his speed and trying to go against attacks. And we haven't seen Natsu go against any like full out opponents outside of like Dragon God territory in 100 years, because like we've seen him like take some fights seriously, but not the same degree where he's like, oh, I'm just gonna go right into it. If Suzaku, like say like if Suzaku got like the threat level put up and like was in a position where Natsu had time to kind of like maybe take a second, think what he was gonna do, then I think Natsu probably would have went into when it went into his other forms. Definitely, like I assume that once we see like these two fight, either 1v1 again, or maybe if they end up being on the same side against Selene later, Natsu, I expect to go into a higher form. Because with Suzaku, I assume he's only got Dragon Force. Maybe he's got something like a Drive form, like with his own specific thing. But I assumed at least just Dragon Force. And I doubt, like, my assumption is that Natsu would have to go Dragon Force in order to defeat someone like Suzaku in Dragon Force. But other than that, though, it looks like Natsu just got completely bodied by Suzaku at this stage. So I really want to know what Natsu's response is after this. Because, like, with Hakune just AoE'd an unfair ability. She AoE'd this ice that if it touches you, you can't use magic, curses, or spiritual shards. That wasn't a power level or like a trick fight or something where like she actually got the upper hand on Natsu, like from a more combative side of things. She had a Hack's ability, tricky, unfair. That's how Hacks works. But with Suzaku, like he just put him to work. But after that point, this is where like the chapter got completely insane, because when it came to Natsu versus Suzaku, I assumed that, you know, one of them was it was either going to be one of the mentions being in Fairy Tail, so them being Fairy Tail members is brought up at some point. Suzaku takes action, or Natsu is the second Natsu sees hostility towards the guild, he's going to take action. Technically, both of those things happen, but I mean, unfortunately, Natsu didn't gauge his opponent properly. But that's where I assumed the chapter was going to go. I thought it'd be more of a fight, but it didn't end up being more of a fight. Again, Natsu, you should have decided to at least go Fire Dragon King mode, man. But Selene pops up. This I did not expect. Like, if Selene was going to be in this chapter, I assumed she'd be observing. I didn't think Selene was just going to arrive onto the battlefield, just kind of strut out and be like, hey, what's going on? But she's interested in Suzaku, because Suzaku mentioned that, you know, he was here to take her down. And I kind of agree with Selene's upset, because even in a few chapters ago, when Suzaku was talking to Ferris and the Grand White Priestess, he's like, oh, defeating Selene wouldn't be a problem. It's just like Fairy Tail's in the way. And I'm just like, man, you're underestimating Fairy Tail, but you are super underestimating Selene. Super underestimating Selene. And we're going to probably see that in the next chapter, unless, like, the next chapter is focused on the other characters. I would much rather at least see one chapter of... I'll even take, like, most of the next chapter being focused on Selene versus Suzaku, and maybe it ends setting up the fights between the Fairy Tail main cast members and Mimi Hakune. And it could work pretty well, because you have two injured people. You have Wendy, super healer, can fix him up. And then Gray can have a rematch with Hakune. Mimi and Lucy can have a rematch. So hopefully Lucy can take her this time. The only thing I would say that my only prediction I'd say, like, I really am hoping happens in this next chapter is I'm really hoping that it's revealed that Suzaku's dragon attribute does have to do with blood. Because, say, like, the wounds that Natsu and Urza got aren't as bad as they looked, but it's like the blood on them is actually the bigger problem. And then Wendy has to neutralize the blood, and, you know, the idea of, like, this offensive dragon blood. Wendy would have to deal with that in order to heal them, because otherwise Wendy's just going to heal them. She's going to be fine. Like, she's already a good proficient healer, and she's in Ellen tier, and if some strange occurrence happens, Irene is going to pop up. Maybe you could have it like that, where it's like Wendy tries to heal him, and similar to when she tried to heal Natsu on Sirius Island, but she couldn't because of the scarf being tainted black from the Oxram curse. She wasn't able to. Maybe it'd be like that, where she's trying to heal him, can't figure it out, and then Irene pops up and says, like, oh, it's the blood, and dragon blood does, you know, whatever prevents healing, which would be really cool on top of that. But it would be really sick just to see, like, why Irene is useful, Wendy figuring more stuff out, because, like, Wendy is really smart for her age, and obviously very capable, but, like, she's not all-knowing, she's not all-powerful. Irene, on the other hand, is, like, borderline all-knowing. She's a 400-plus-year-old dragon queen that, you know, was one of the strongest people in the world at a time. Like, the only people above her were, like stuff like Zarafak and Logia and whatnot. The whole setup at the end of the chapter, you know, they're running away, they're trying to, you know, they got to get at least the distance. Whereas Selene is just, like, she's ready for this fight. And Suzaku, man, I really like Suzaku. I think he's badass. I like that he didn't show any hesitation with with Selene. But I'm just like, man, you are not, you got to be careful. I was really happy with that last page when it's like, just, you know, half of their face on one panel, on each side of the panel. It reminded me so much of when Irene went and talked to Actologia, and we got the same kind of setup. But it was Irene on this, Irene and Selene are on the same side, and Actologia and Suzaku are on the same side, but the positions are switched. You have the Dragon Slayer being Suzaku, also being the man, and you have, Selene being the dragon and being the woman in the scenario, whereas like in the opposite version it was Irene's on that side, you know, she's a dragon slayer, and then you have, you know, Actologia. Sort of, I mean, he's borderline at the same thing. I know he is like a full dragon, or he's not a full dragon rather, but you know what I mean. You really get what I mean. Dude spends more of his time, you know, running around as a dragon, so I'm just I kind of cheat and use that, but I mean at the same time, you get what I mean when it comes to the setup with it. I was like saying it, and I'm like, God, I gotta specify that I remembered Actologia is a dragon slayer. He's not a real dragon. Otherwise, if I left that out in the video, I would be so furious because someone would comment about it, and I'd be like, how did I fuck that up so bad? But yeah, this was a really solid chapter. I thought it was actually really good for Suzaku's character, him and Selene, the setups for the next chapter, and just the general tone that it set. Because again, Suzaku, I'm really hoping that after his fight, he just kind of like has like a, wow, I underestimated that chick for real. And Selene's just sitting there just like, what did you expect? Like, Selene is just like aware. Like, maybe Suzaku has to run away, and she's just like, yeah, you shouldn't be underestimating me, bitch. He's like, Selene legitimately is, like, as far as we know, outside of if we ever get to Ankh Saram, Selene's one of the strongest 3 people in the verse right now. The only other people are Ignia and Viernes. But other than that, Selene is top. She's the strongest known woman in, like, the whole fairy tale set of timelines. Like, the only way you would be able to find, like, a woman stronger than her right now is go to an alternate timeline that she's in. But other than that, Selene is she's just out here. She's out here just running big presence. And Suzaku, I can't wait to see you act, man, but shit, like, you are definitely in over your head, like, for real. I assume he's definitely stronger than God Serena. Like, I don't think for a second he's not. Even Blitz Base Natsu is definitely beyond God Serena. But with Selene, he has the luckiness that Selene is going to be more playful than Actologia, but at the same time, like, she's more tricky than Actologia. Like, she is a tricky woman. She's not only does she have, like, you know, her whole portals and whatnot, but she probably has so many abilities we don't even know about yet. And, like, she's smart. She's clearly very smart. So I would assume that, like, any time that Suzaku might do something that might be a problem to her, she's probably going to figure it out, like, almost instantly. So we'll see on that one. What's funny is, like, when I was thinking about the review for this chapter, I actually don't know how long this is. Until I end the recording, because, like, this is the way that I have my stuff set up right now, so I have no idea how long it is, but, like, I had a lot of fun both talking about the chapter and just reading the chapter, because this is some of the hype stuff I was really hoping for, and I've mentioned it so many times, I've been super happy with how much Selene has been active in the arc, and especially now we're gonna have Selene versus Suzaku 1v1, and on top of that, I'm guessing by the end of it, Suzaku is gonna put some more respect on Selene's name, which is only gonna make me happier, from both him being humble and aware, and also hyping up my girl. So anyway, other than that though, comment below, thumbs up the video, but friend, like button, subscribe button, and check out my other videos. But other than that, I appreciate everyone who's already subscribed. Thank you all for listening. Bye.